Time for a dance?
I don't dance.
Sophie.
I never ever dance.
Hey guys, today I want to talk about Aftersun and how freaking amazing it is. When I tell you, you will leave the movie as a changed person, I'm not kidding. So Aftersun is the directorial feature film debut from Charlotte Wells starring Normal People star Paul Mescal and newcomer Frankie Corio. The film is set at a holiday resort in Turkey around the 90s or early 2000s. So in summary, it's a film about a father and daughter who go on a holiday, but it is so much more than that. And when I tell you that the ending of this film was one of the most impactful, beautifully crafted endings I've ever seen, I'm not exaggerating. I was in shambles and it was a total experience. And I'm here to break it down for you. So first things first, the plot. Callum goes on a holiday with his 11-year-old daughter Sophie to a resort in Turkey. Callum is just shy of turning 31, making him a very young dad. And from the get-go, it's obvious that Callum is a very loving father, and he has a very adorable relationship with his spunky daughter. For the most part, the film feels very slice of life. We are privy to watch this father and daughter go on holiday, and it's only at the end do we actually realize what this film is all about. Throughout the movie, we see a lot of things coming about. For one, Sophie is at an impressionable age, and she is very observant of her surroundings. She's uninterested in making friends with children her own age, but is more fascinated with the British teens that are also holidaying at the resort, which exposes her to a lot of mature content, which, side note, really kept me on my toes and set my anxiety going, but I'll get back to that in a second. So as the movie progresses, we learn a bit more about Callum. He isn't financially doing well, he doesn't have a job or relationship, and we can see he is struggling, most likely with depression. And interspersed throughout the film, we see a woman and Callum dancing at a rave. So what about this amazing ending I keep talking about? Well, in the end, we are left with the impression that shortly after this trip, Callum died by suicide, and that this movie is actually Sophie thinking back about the last time she saw her dad. What's more is that the woman from the rave scene is adult Sophie, and it's in her mind as the scene is played alongside the last time Sophie danced with her father to Queen's Under Pressure, which sent my body through loops. I still get goosebumps thinking about this scene. So when I say this film was an experience, I'm not exaggerating because there were so many things going on in my mind. First off, with this rave scene that was interspersed throughout the film, I thought from the beginning that it was Callum's flashback to the night he first met Sophie's mom. But as I told you, we realized later on it's actually Sophie as an adult. And this scene took me a bit to process. I was feeling the feels, but my mind had to keep replaying and thinking about what I had watched to soak it in, which I feel almost kind of mimicked shock. Like, I feel like I went through shock at the end of this movie. I felt the emotions before my mind could comprehend what was happening. So I'm gonna try and take you through what I was thinking and articulate it the best I can. When I first realized it was Sophie, I was like, ooh, okay, no, that was not articulate at all, sorry. When I first realized it was Sophie, I was taken aback. And initially I thought, maybe they had run into each other and Callum is a drunk who didn't live up to his potential. And there were a lot of signs that Callum would drink a lot. So at first this made sense to me. So then I started thinking maybe Callum didn't keep in touch with Sophie after that trip. Maybe he fell off the wagon, ended up wasting his life, and that this movie was about Sophie's last great memory with her dad and her shitty running into him in the present. But then we cut to the end of the trip, which is through the little camcorder that Callum has been using. That her dad had turned on that trip. And that's probably why she's taking this time to really reflect on the last time she met her dad. And after we see it's adult Sophie who's been watching these tapes, the camera pans from her to what I think is her consciousness, her imagination. We see the camera pan back to Callum. He turns off the camera and he walks straight through these double doors that lead straight into the rave. And it's the fact that he's wearing the same shirt as the rave scenes that I believe that this is Sophie's consciousness, where we are looking into her mind, her imagination. And there were a lot of hints throughout the film. As I said, like we could see that Callum has been struggling quite a bit, but it's quite subtle. And I feel like it's because we're seeing this holiday through her memories. I feel like the whole point of the movie is adult Sophie is trying to understand her last holiday with her dad. Were there signs that she may have missed that her dad was actually struggling so much? And because of that, I believe he ended up dying. And there was this one scene that had cut through the film, which was the first time we see adult Sophie. So the film abruptly cuts in the middle to adult Sophie waking up and her partner wishes her happy birthday. And so I believe that those rave scenes were from Sophie's dream the night before her birthday, where she encounters her father. And I believe that the ending shot represents where she thinks her dad has gone to. Not literally, but the rave represents the badness, the darkness in her father's life, and that after this trip, he went back into that dark space, and that is why he did what he did after. So what I found interesting was that this whole time, I kind of thought we were following Callum's story and his perspective, but in fact, we were going through Sophie's memories. We were going through the same journey she was going through and trying to piece the puzzle as to why her dad did this. And what's ironic is, as I said, the film portrays Sophie as extremely observant throughout the film, but I think her dad's depression and suicide came as a huge shock to her. So she's trying to relive the vacation, picking up on signs she didn't before, trying to understand what she could not. So how did they achieve this visceral, moving ending? The ending of this film hit me so fast and unexpectedly, and a huge part of why it impacted me was the way the story is told. One of the things I love about this film is the way we as the audience are subjected to the material. I feel like in general, especially in this kind of movie, being shown is so much more important and powerful than being told what is happening. For example, if there was a voiceover with future Sophie saying, "And that was the last time I saw my dad," it just wouldn't hit home the way showing us did. I wouldn't have gone through that state of shock with all the emotions. It just wouldn't have had the same impact. Taking the time to really process what I watched and make sense of it. The scenes and interactions are so intimate. The way information is passed on to us is so nuanced and subtle. And it's because of the absence of obvious dialogue and narration that really makes me feel like, I am here watching this father and daughter on a holiday, like a fly on the wall. Or in this movie's case, it's like as if I'm actually traveling through time and space, as if I'm actually going through Sophie's memories. It's because it's a little vague, we are forced to really digest and soak up what we are watching, which is why it was so powerful and moving. Secondly, the setups and payoffs were quite unconventional and well crafted to trick us. As I stated before, there were a lot of mature content that Sophie was witnessing throughout the film, which gave me very uncomfortable, unsettling feelings. And I kept thinking that something bad was going to happen because of Callum's negligence. And I feel like that was exactly what Charlotte Wells wanted us to experience. So there was a scene in the beginning where Callum is trying to teach Sophie self-defense. I know the basics of setup and payoff, which is basically in a script, conventionally, there would be a setup scene beforehand with dialogue or a shot of something, and it ties in later in the movie with the payoff. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh, she's gonna need to use this later on in the film. So I kept waiting for the shoe to drop, when in the end, nothing externally bad happened to Sophie. The teenage kids she met, the boy she kissed, being locked out of her room all night, none of that hurt her the way I thought it would. But instead, in the most ironic twist, the thing that ended up hurting and damaging her the most was the very person who was trying to teach her how to protect herself. The very person who wanted to protect her ended up hurting her. Boom. The setup was set up for the payoff to shock. Also, I'd like to add that I had to Google what Aftersun meant because I had never heard of it before. And Aftersun is the lotion that you put on after being exposed to the sun for long periods of time. And when I realized this, I was just so impressed with all the layers and themes of this film. So there are a few scenes where we see Callum putting on sunscreen for Sophie, and he's quite particular about it. And I feel like it's symbolic of how he wants to protect Sophie, like with the self-defense teaching. And in a way, the sun symbolizes the last holiday they're sharing. And he is unaware of the protection or the aftersun Sophie will need after the holiday is over. And this film is the aftersun for Sophie. It's like her trying to understand what happened on that trip. What signs did she miss out on? Why did her dad do what he did afterwards? Amazing. Just absolutely amazing. Okay, and I'd also like to point out the brilliant use of the strobe lights. When it comes to that shock value that I got at the end, it has a lot to do with the slow realization of what I'm staring at. And I think the strobe lights definitely had a big part of that realization. So if you're familiar with like any dance club or rave or, you know, any party of any sorts, there are strobe lights, and you know, it takes a while to understand what you're seeing right in front of you because it has like this delayed effect on you. Things that are happening in real time kind of look like it's happening in slow motion, and I think that was the effect that Charlotte Wells wanted for us as well. This kind of like slow realization of what happened to Callum and his fate, and when it hits you, when you are finally able to understand what you're staring at for the longest time, it really hits you. So I thought that was brilliant on delivering that impact for us. Basically, the way it's set up and the way it unfolds, it puts us in her psyche and through her thought process. And it was just overall so well done. So yeah, that's my take on Aftersun. I absolutely love this movie. It brings me to tears. I have, like, the whole time I've been talking about this film, I've had goosebumps. I feel like this is just one of those films that just linger with you. Every time I listen to Under Pressure now, it's just never the same. And every time I think about this movie, I'm just transported back to that revelation at the end. It just broke my heart. It was such a beautiful film. Paul Mescal did such an outstanding job. I think he deserves a lot more recognition for this film. Same goes to Frankie. She absolutely killed the role. Their relationship was so believable, so natural. Like, kudos to everybody. Charlotte Wells, she was snubbed of an Oscar. She definitely deserved a nomination at the very least. Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is everyone's cup of tea. It's not exactly a mainstream film, but I'm guessing if you're watching this video and you stuck to the end this far, it probably means you like the film. So I'd love to read your comments down below, how you felt about this movie. Did you experience similar feelings that I did? Was it as visceral for y'all? Was it as shocking for y'all? You know, my sister-in-law, she watched it after me because I begged her to watch it, and she kind of guessed from the very beginning. But yeah, did you see it coming? How did you guys feel? And please subscribe to my channel. It really means a lot. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Bye.